But if you're on a walk, and I've heard you talk about, using the recall to bring the dog out of that and back into social drive. So what are you doing there? Because obviously on a walk, you don't have a place. So what's your substitute to help create that contrast like you talked about for the dog on the walk versus like a in the home situation like Maureen's dealing with?
Now when I go out for a walk, then I can address those things. Say if the dog's forging out from me and barking, a lot of times if I can't hold the heel and that needs to be shored up later, then I'll let the dog break away from me and I'll do like a 2-3 step recall and bring the dog back into a heel, if that makes sense. So I'll let them forge out on whatever they're barking at, and I just back up and recall them and reposition them back into a heel. Yeah. Put them into a sit and see how they feel about that. If they can't handle it, I might back up 2 more feet and find again where the dog is not over the threshold, where then it can kind of analyze it. If it's a puppy, usually they're barking at stuff because it's unfamiliar to them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a foot, sometimes 2 feet further away from whatever it is, they might go, oh, all right, it's a clown with a bunch of balloons. Okay, put that in the Rolodex, move on. Right? You want to teach the dogs, you want to give them knowledge of the world, and so I think a lot of times people want to just correct that behavior, but I'm like, yeah, I want it to stop. But sometimes it's like, well, I want the dog to evaluate what that is. Yeah. So then he can put that in his Rolodex, just like dog will bark at UPS. If you fix that, he'll bark at FedEx because that truck sounds different. And the mailman is completely different. But it's the same protocol that I would recall him off UPS truck. So eventually that sound doesn't have a threat, or there's no meaning to it. Right. So that dog has a knowledge of what UPS means. Now he doesn't know what FedEx truck means. And he doesn't. So me, I'm always starting them on the long line. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so if that dog is barking at something away from me, I'm going to recall it back to me. Right. And then that's going to shut that off. So that would be how I would build my relationship, that when you're next to me, you're safe, just as you're safe going on place. When you're next to me, I can easily address where you're thinking of going before you go there. So like, I'll leave it for me as a blanket statement for I don't like where you're thinking about going versus I don't like what you're doing. Mm-hmm. I don't typically want to correct when they're in behavior, because it goes back. You want to catch the intention. Right. So I want to make sure that I have a leave it that's taught not on what's triggering the barking, but I'll teach it off of benign things first. In the yard, they're grabbing the stick, leave it.